most of human history, sugar was unknown. Until around 8000 BCE, sweetness came from fruits, honey, or dates. These were seasonal, limited, and difficult to preserve. Sugar, as a substance that could be stored, transported, and concentrated, didn't yet exist. The story begins in New Guinea, where sugarcane was first domesticated. People chewed the plant for energy and pleasure. It was not a commodity. It was not traded. It was simply a plant. Over centuries, sugarcane spread west through trade routes into India and China. Around 500 BCE, Indian producers developed techniques to boil sugarcane juice and crystallize it into a solid. This was the first true sugar. The word itself comes from the Sanskrit shakara, meaning gravel or gritty crystals. At this stage, sugar was rare, labor-intensive, and expensive. Between 600 CE and 1400 CE, sugar production expanded through Persia and the Islamic world. Arab traders and farmers refined sugar techniques and introduced sugarcane wherever they established control. Sugar entered Europe slowly, mostly through medicine. It was used to preserve remedies and treat illness. Ordinary people did not consume it. Even kings struggled to obtain it. In 1226, the King of England requested just 3 pounds of sugar from a trader traveling to Cairo. That request alone shows how rare the substance still was. The turning point came after the Crusades and the rise of European overseas expansion. Europe wanted sugar, but could not grow it easily at home. So the plantation system is created. By the late 1400s, sugarcane was introduced into Atlantic islands controlled by Spain and Portugal. These were distant lands, removed from European oversight, but close enough for shipping. Here, a new system emerged: the plantation. A plantation was land taken from local people, controlled by foreign investors, dedicated to one crop, and powered by coerced labor. This model did not originate in the Americas, but it was perfected there. Sugarcane required extreme labor. It had to be planted by hand, cut with blades, crushed within 48 hours before spoiling, boiled in dangerous furnaces. This was not seasonal work. It was constant. European settlers did not want to do this labor. Indigenous populations declined rapidly due to disease and violence. So plantation owners looked elsewhere. Then they turned to Africa. European traders tapped into existing African slave networks and expanded them beyond anything previously known. Between 1500 and 1866, an estimated 12.5 million Africans were forcibly transported across the Atlantic. Of those taken, 50 to 66% were sent to sugar plantations. Sugar plantations had the highest mortality rate of any slave labor system. Unlike cotton or tobacco, sugar production killed workers quickly. Plantation owners expected death and planned for replacement. People were treated as consumable inputs. This was not incidental. It was structural. On sugar plantations in places like Haiti, Jamaica, and Brazil, enslaved Africans worked 16 to 20 hours a day. The dangers were constant. Cane knives, severed limbs. Crushing mills pulled in hands and arms. Boiling sugar caused severe burns that never healed. To prevent total destruction of a trapped body, machetes were kept nearby to amputate limbs caught in rollers. Life expectancy after arrival was often less than 10 years. Families were not preserved. Culture was suppressed. Survival itself was resistance. Response and misuse of power. Sugar wealth transformed Europe. Profits from sugar financed banks, built ports and factories, funded early capitalism, supported industrialization. In Britain, cheap sugar fueled the working class. Sweetened tea and jam became daily calories that powered factory labor. Consumption soared. In the 1700s, sugar intake in Britain rose dramatically, far surpassing other European countries. At the same time, abolitionist voices emerged. Quakers and activists condemned sugar as stained with human blood. They launched the first mass consumer boycott in history, urging people to stop buying slave-produced sugar. This pressure mattered, but it did not end exploitation. Britain abolished the slave trade in 1807 and slavery in 1833. But sugar production continued. Former slave owners were compensated. Enslaved people were not. Across the Caribbean, Africa, and Asia, new labor systems replaced slavery. Indentured labor, contract labor. With coercive terms, workers from India, China, and Southeast Asia were transported under harsh conditions. In Cuba, nearly half of Chinese indentured workers died before completing their contracts. By 1850, half of the world's sugar was still produced by enslaved labor. Exploitation adapted. It did not disappear. The modern consequence: abundance without memory. By the 20th century, sugar production expanded further through beet sugar and industrial processing. Governments subsidized sugar. Corporations marketed it aggressively. Sugar was added to foods that never needed it. In 1850, the average person consumed 1.8 kilograms of sugar per year. By 2017, the average American consumed that same amount in about 11 days. The result was a global health crisis: obesity, diabetes, heart disease, declared a pandemic by the World Health Organization in 1999. The history behind this was rarely taught. Sugar was never just food. It reshaped Africa through forced extraction of people. It built European wealth through black suffering. It helped create modern capitalism and global inequality. Today, sugar is everywhere, but the system that made it cheap remains largely invisible. Understanding sugar's history is not about guilt. It is about recognizing how deeply colonial exploitation is embedded in everyday life. Sugar changed the world by changing who paid the cost, and that cost was overwhelmingly African and black.